Congo or Mali or Ghana or whatever. Not only that, but one reason why, for instance, talking about political prisoners, one reason why Geronimo Pratt is free today is because there's support from the Libyan government supporting a campaign we made for smashing the FBI, CIA, and all intelligence agencies, including the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. This is Pan-Africanism. And you think about it, and you don't might not realize this, but wherever you go in the world, I don't care where you go in the world, you go to New Zealand, you go to Paris, we are the most, black people, African people, are the most oppressed. I just came back from Costa Rica. The poorest people in Costa Rica are African people. The poorest people in India, the largest population in India, are the Dalit, what they call the untouchable. So, as the African people throughout the world, we're the most oppressed. Not just a political question, there's also a psychological component to that. I'll get to you, bro. There's a psychological component that's part of white supremacy. It's subliminally and sublimely put in your mind that if it's black, it's evil, negative, not humanoid, it's subliminal and sublime. It's a history to this whole development. So one of our struggles as an oppressed people, I'm an African born in America, is to change the equation so that my people here, my people in New Zealand, my people in the Fiji Islands, my people in Hawaii, my people in Nigeria, my people in London, that we can gain liberation, total liberation. Total liberation because we have a land base called Africa that is united. I'm old enough to remember back in the 60s, 50s and 60s, there was a slogan, you didn't have a Chinaman's chance of survival. How many people remember that? Then they had to go to yellow peril. What that meant was that China was so weak, so disorganized, so caught up in semi-feudal, semi-capitalist relations, that they were one of the poorest countries in the world. But today, if you read the New York Times, they say the greatest challenge to the United States hegemony in the world is China. Right now we speak, the vice premier of China is meeting, and the United States is trying to figure out how they're going to check this Chinese power. It's giving dignity and respect and power to Chinese people throughout the world. This occurred under the Chinese Communist Party, which, by the way, is a party still in power. Whatever contradictions you may say, it's a one-party socialist state. We got 3 minutes. So in essence, my message to you is you're not going to hear about this. You're going to hear about Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Community League, which is the largest black organization in the history of humanity. 5 million disciplined members. You didn't hear about that. You didn't hear about Malcolm X until he was killed because you didn't hear about the Nation of Islam. There's a whole rich underground that occurs in our communities throughout the world. In Los Angeles, there's a massive movement going on under the banner of Pan-Africanism. You're not going to hear about this, but the media is not going to portray that because the media learns this lesson. It's my final point. That when they put my comrades in the Black Panther Party on the cover of Life magazine with weapons, shotguns, marching into Sacramento, our membership jumped from about 50 members to 5,000. 5,000. This enfranchised African throughout the country saw this as a form of response and rebellion to the United States European capitalism. I thank you very much. You have a question.
Can we save your question before we go speaking? I want to thank you, Dinon.
Cool.
I want to bring someone else up because you hear this history of the Black liberation struggle, Black liberation movement, the Black Panthers, and so forth. They were always trying to make it out as a black thing. It was a black thing. Black people against white people. That was the way they tried to cover up true revolutionary aspirations, what we were trying to do in our community. For instance, you've all heard the slogan, all power to the people, right? Okay, who created that slogan? The blacks? Who created that slogan? Who created that slogan? That slogan? Elvis Cleveland? All right, all of y'all flunked Black history. All right. That slogan came up from a field marshal in the Black Panther Party, an opening named Richard Aoki. He was a Japanese American, and he was the field marshal of the Black Panther Party. How many of you knew there were Japanese in the Black Panther Party? I did. All right. You get a Black History button. All right. But it wasn't just the Black Panther Party. There were other groups out there. There were the Puerto Rican group, right? Young Lords. So much Young Patriots, right? There were other groups. There were white groups. One of the groups that supported the work of the Black Panther Party on the campuses and in their communities was the Students for Democratic Society. How many of you heard of them? Okay. All right. So, our next speaker was a member of the Students for Democratic Society. He has been my comrade for the last 20 years or so. Like a relic of him. For about 20 years, he's been involved in all the major activities and struggles in the city of Los Angeles and across the country. He has a paper, he's called Anti-Racist Actions, that deals with racism, challenging the Nazis, challenging the skinheads whenever they come to town. They were here, 2 years ago? He organized that counter activity right here. And he's been on the line with us. He's my comrade. He wants to talk about the conference there this week. This weekend is a national conference for Jericho, and he would like to speak to you about that too. Not right now.
I will speak about that. The Jericho Amnesty movement is about 14 years old now, and we reconstituted a chapter here in Los Angeles about a year and a half ago under the leadership of the Black Riders Liberation Party. And the Jericho Amnesty movement nationally is trying to free all political prisoners, particularly the people who've been locked up, undergoing Del Bro, but there are people constantly being imprisoned politically in this country. General Taco, for example, at the Black Riders Liberation Party, some of us marched over to his hearings at the court by the Twin Towers because they were trying to put him back in the state prison. Because of support from Occupy and from other community people, he has been released, but he has a 21st century slave shackle on his ankles, a GPS device that tracks him everywhere he goes. He can be stopped at any moment by the parole authorities. He's prevented from associating with his own family members because they're in the Black Riders Liberation Party. He couldn't be here today because he can't stand next to other people in his own organization. So Jericho Amnesty Movement is having a national meeting here in Los Angeles this weekend, and there are several public activities that are part of that. This evening, we passed out some flyers. There's a cultural, political event starting at 7, which includes the Aztec dancers, Danza Cuauhtemoc, a group called Son Real, which plays jarocho music. Jarocho music is basically Afro-Mexican music from the Caribbean coast of Africa, in the Venezuela, the Veracruz area. Hector Rivera, who's a slam poet, Puerto Rican, former grand jury resistor himself. A theater piece by Jihad Abdul-Hamid, who's one of the national co-coordinators of Jericho. There's a one-man theater piece about prison and violence and the role it plays in people's lives. And then also some of the Black Guerrilla Nation rappers associated with the Black Riders Liberation Party. But to go back to the history question for a minute, I came up at a particular time in history because I'm 65. And so I came of age politically when there was a very strong, vibrant, and visible black freedom struggle in this country, and black power movement in this country, and black liberation organizations in this country. And it was very clear to me, becoming political, that was what was transforming this society and its groups and forcing people like myself to rethink everything there was to think about in society and to understand it in terms of a struggle for liberation. And so the women's liberation movement came up, the gay liberation movement came up, and many other movements came up in response to the example of the Black Panther Party in particular, but other black liberation organizations, the Action Movement and others. Dodge Revolutionary Union Movement. I don't know if people here have heard of DRUM. This was line workers in the automotive industry who were being, oppressed within the United Auto Workers as well as by General Motors and Chrysler and the corporations that said we won't take it anymore, and created a rank and file labor organization based on, those principles of solidarity, and that it was very manifest to everyone that was really at the root of the contradictions of this society. And so you saw the American Indian movement, you saw, as you said, the Young Lords and later other formations in the Puerto Rican independence struggle. And globally, there were Israeli Black Panthers, there were Polynesian Black Panthers connecting to the Black Panther Party, reprinting their literature, communicating on a global level at a time when we did not have the internet or Twitter or any of those mechanisms. It was word of mouth and sending newspapers. Today, I think people are much less aware of it. Occupy, I think, sort of felt like it sprang out of nowhere, but that's not the case. And so when people talk, the brother talked about Oakland, there's a reason why the struggle in Oakland is more advanced, and the consciousness in Oakland is more advanced, is because there's a history, a living history of struggle and resistance in Oakland that's been manifesting itself for decades since the Black Panther Party arose there, but in particular the struggle around Oscar Grant and other struggles that took place in Oakland against police abuse with peace people in the street. And so again, the question, people kind of related to Tahrir Square, to the brother who immolated himself in Tunisia, people need to understand that manifestation came out of Africa and presents itself with not just the quote-unquote Arab Spring, but an African liberation movement against imperialism, colonialism, neocolonialism, and for a radical democratic transformation of society. And that created a very infectious spirit that then manifests itself here in this country as well. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that phenomenon and the importance of the Black freedom movement, the Black liberation struggle today, forces like the Black Riders Liberation Party, and you need to understand that their actual physical presence on the street and survival is practically miraculous. I mean, I've been working with them for over a decade, and every single year they've been attacked by the police. Some of their members have been killed here in Los Angeles. They had a house in San Bernardino County, and they were attacked by the FBI, the San Bernardino Sheriffs, the LA Police Department, LA Sheriffs, with armored personnel carriers. And they had sealed off a 4-block radius around their home in order to try to carry out an attack on them, hoping to create an armed confrontation which they could kill them, the way they did the Panthers. And they did not succeed in that, but they kidnapped some of the children and separated family members. And they've done this repeatedly over and over again. So for this formation to be here, you need to understand what an example and what a threat that is to the people who watch us from the steps, but also the power that represents, and the fact that we need to find ways to unite with them. You might have ideological differences, you might not agree with self-defense or a democratic centralist organization, you might not agree with that. It doesn't matter, because they represent that struggle, and their survival is vital to the survival of Occupy and to the transformation of the society. So I would just urge people, if you can, to come tonight to the program. You'll see dozens of them there, along with people who come here from around the country, from Jericho, from DC, from Boston, from Richmond, Virginia, from up Northern California, from Portland, Nebraska, Chicago, and come and talk with some of them at this event tonight. Come back tomorrow. We have an all-day event from 10 to 5 at the Southern California Library, if you can, and we'll be discussing campaigns in California to free political prisoners. And that is a very, very vital thing. We've had the experience here, whatever you want to call it. We have 300 political prisoners or more from the Occupy movement, and it's vital to have that solidarity and to keep that struggle uppermost, because that's what they use to try to break our struggle, to try to scare people off. And so Audrey Lutalo, who's a former political prisoner, has always said that you can gauge any movement by how they deal with their political prisoners. And if we don't